Next, we want to create a system where once we've collected all the stars of the level, we would show a UI congratulating the player that they've collected all of the stars, and then we give them the option to continue playing or to go back to the main menu. So we'll start by going to the player blueprint, and then we go to the event graph, and in the begin play event, here, let's first take this and comment it and write setup HUD UI, so we know what this does. And then after this, we will call get all actors of class. What this function does is it will check the current level and look for all of the actors of one type of a class. And so we will select the star blueprint, and this way it will check for all of the stars in the current level. And then it will return to us an array of all of the stars. An array is basically a list of variables. It can be anything like booleans, an int, a reference to an asset, or anything else. In this case, it's a list of all of the stars in the level. So we can get this and then from it get the length of the array, and that will tell us how many there are. And then we promote it to a variable, and we'll call that max stars. So we know the maximum amount of stars in the scene. And we'll connect that. And to know the amount of stars, we will print string and connect that to it. And then we save, compile. And now when we press play, we'll see the number 1 printed. And that's because we only have 1 star in the scene. To test this, let's make duplicates and put them elsewhere in the map. And then press save again. And save all. And then we press play. And now it shows 2 stars in the scene. Let's go back to the player. And let's delete the print string. And let's put this in a comment as well. And call it get max stars. We save and compile. And now let's go back to the collect star function. And in here, we move this to the side. And we want to check when we collect a star, we want to see if you've collected all of the stars in the scene. So we can get the max star. And we can call equal operation and then connect those two together. And this way it will check if both of these variables equal the same number. So if you've collected 2 stars so far and the max amount of stars in the scene are 2, then this will return true. So we'll create a branch, and now we have this formula where it checks. And in case it is not all of the stars collected, we will display the UI we made before that congratulates the player for collecting a star. And in the case of collecting the final star of the level, we want to create another widget that shows the player that they've collected all of the stars. So we can copy and paste this one here. And right now we don't want to use the current star collected widget, so we'll go to that one. And actually we can duplicate this and call it all stars collected. And now we can save all and go back to the player blueprint. And over here we can write in the all stars collected. And to test if this is working properly, we can save, compile, go back to this new one we created. And we'll just quickly change the text to something else. And we'll write, you got all stars. Press save, compile, and let's move the window here. And then we press play. And now we collect the first one, and we get the right widget for that. And let's collect the last one. And now we get the you got all stars widget. Now let's change a few things here again. I want to move this a little bit around and duplicate this twice. And now we can place this kind of in a fun way. And we move this a bit down as well. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Maybe 300. Yeah. Move this down. Move these two down. And let's align them. So let's check the Y position for this one. And okay, this one's 285. Copy that. And put here 285. Okay. Save. Complete. And now it looks a lot better. One thing we want to do is we don't want to remove this widget when it appears. So we go to the graph and we delete this delay and remove from parent system. And we save and compile. And then back in Designer, we want to create something new. So we will add here 2 buttons. So first let's create one. Let's write in button. Take this and then drag and drop it into the canvas panel. And now there's a button over here. And let's set the anchor to the bottom center. And let's once again do this center alignment to 0.5, 0.5. And then zero these out. And now let's set the position to minus 3.350. And change the size to 360 for X and 100 for Y. And for now the button is just empty. So let's put a text inside of it. So let's look for text. And we can drag and drop that into the button, and that will add a text inside of it. And let's select the text and center it and change the font size to 40, and we'll have the text say continue. Let's also set the color of the button to something more nicer, and let's set it to something bluish like this over here. Yeah, that's nice. Press OK and then save. And let's change the button text name to continue and save and compile. And now let's make another button by right-clicking on it and duplicating it. And this time we'll call this back to title. And then change the text as well to back to title. And then press save and compile. And let's move the position a little bit to be below the continue button. And let's change the color a little bit to something more greenish, like this. Press OK, save and compile. And so right now when we press play, and now when we collect both stars, we get this nice UI with the buttons. But we can still see everything around us and it doesn't look too good. So let's add a blur in the background. So we can do that by searching here for blur, and there's a background blur. And when we drag and drop this into here, we have to make sure to put it at the top so that it's behind everything. And we'll change the anchor to this over here, which allows us to cover the entire screen by changing the offset to 0, 0, 0. And now it's covering the entire screen. And let's set the blur strength to 10. And now we save, compile. And now when we go into the game and collect both stars, the screen blurs and it's looking much better now. But as you can see, we can still control the player and we can't really control the UI. So what we have to do is go to the graph, and over here we will get the player controller. And from here we will set input mode to UI only. And we'll set the flash input to true. And one more thing, from the get player controller, we'll drag from it and set show mouse cursor. And we'll connect that and we'll press true. And now when we press save and compile and we go back and we collect both stars, we can no longer move around in the game and we can use the mouse button. But there's one issue, as you can see, monsters can still move around and the game is still running. So one final thing we'll do here is we will set game pause, which will basically pause the game. And then we set it to true. So now when we collect both stars, we will see that everything paused in the game. And that's exactly what we want. But right now, when we press continue, nothing is happening. So we'll take care of that next. In the designer section, we go and click on the button for continue, and we scroll down, and down here there's these events. And basically we want to check the on clicked event and click on the plus button. And this will create an event in the event graph where it will get executed when we press the button. So what we want to do is basically resume the game when we press the button. So we'll once again get player controller. And here, this time we set input mode to game only. And then once again also, we set show mouse cursor to false this time. And finally, we have to set game paused to false as well. So we go back to playing the game and nothing is paused anymore. And now when we save and compile and we press play, we collect 2 stars and everything paused. And when we press continue again, the game continues. But one more issue we have is that the UI is still showing. So we go back, and over here, just like last time, we remove from parent. Press save, compile. Now one last time, collect 2 stars. And now the game paused, and then we press continue, and everything's back to normal. And that's it for this lesson.